Today we're going to be looking at some of the initial setup things that you might do with your Allen & Heath SQ series board. Today I'm on the SQ5, it's the little guy. I've got my iPad, I've got a stage box, it's the AB168. I'm bad with model numbers, I'll put it on the screen or something. So I've got my iPad, I've got the stage box, I've got my band in the box for my inputs. So it'll be like we have mic inputs. We're not just doing this with virtual sound check tracks coming in digitally, so we'll be able to see all of that as we go. We're gonna get set up. I've got a wireless router set up with the console. So one important thing when you're doing your wireless router is you need to make sure that your iPad and your console, they have an IP address that's in the same zip code, so to speak. So the first two sets of numbers, the 192, 168, need to be the same. You can see it here. If we're on some whatever page, if we go to setup and then down here to network setup, we're gonna make sure that our IP address is there and we can see it on the IP address page. On the app, if I go to other, I've already got it set up one time, but I'm gonna do it from scratch for you guys. We're gonna go to other, and then we're gonna type this in here, just like we see it right there. When we hit done and okay, it's gonna ask me for the admin password. This console's already been set up with an administrative password, but I'm still trying to show you how to do that. So if you've set up an administrative password, this is when you would type it in. If not, you should use the default one, whatever that is. So, user password, shh, don't look, okay? Okay, now we are connected. So I can see if I move this on the iPad, it responds quite quickly, which is nice. I like the fine tuning with that. I like the quick response, so to speak. It bugs me when there's a lag. It's a little thing, but it matters to me. So now that we have our console and our iPad connected, the iPad makes it much easier for naming our channels. And because of the fluid architecture or the flexibility of this board, it's easier to keep things in order. Because the layer that you might see here, like we're on layer A and we see some of the drum channels and we see a guitar vocal and the compressor and iPhone input, right? These aren't necessarily the order of the channels in which they're appearing on our stage box or in the back of our board. So the iPad on its inputs page shows everything in its original order. That helps us a lot for getting set up. Now that we have this going, I like to name my channels first for what input they should be. Now you should be working from an input list if you need information on how to make one of those. I've got a video that I'll put up here or down in the description so that you can check that out. But we're working from an input list so that we know what should go where before we get on the board. If you just start making it up as you go along, you're gonna get into trouble. Right? Hey, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is James, and if you're looking to make running sound at church exciting and fun and do a great job, you found the right place. So hit that subscribe button. We got more great videos like this coming out. You'll want to join the Club of Sound Ninjas. Just trust me, we have fun here. So we've got a couple channels up on the board already. Right? I'm trying to recycle from somebody else's setup, but we're trying to get set up from scratch. But here on the iPad, I can select my channel and you can see along the top here, we've got our processing, routing, all that. We want to go to processing and then touch where it says the channel name. If this just says IP1, that's input 1, and then you can start naming and adding a color to your channels. I like to hit the next button so that I don't have to click it again, and then I can just work through my input list one channel at a time. All right, so we're gonna go through all of these. You can see that these are all set up. But before we get to this point, there's one thing that we really need to do. We need to go ahead and designate which of our channels are going to be stereo. So you can't link them quite as easily after the fact. So hopefully in your input list, you've designated which ones are stereo. To do that before we start, we're going to set up and then we're going to mixer config. And you can see along the top here, we've got our inputs, mixes, bus configuration, and roll. We're gonna ignore these three for now, but just our input stereo channels. And we're gonna select which odd even pair we're going to have as stereo channels and group those together. So for me, I know I've got overheads on 7 and 8. I've got the drum pads on 9 and 10. 13, 14, and 15, 16 are stereo pairs of electric guitars. 17, 18 are keyboards. And then 23 and 24, I have crowd mics. That's the input list that I have for the band in a box that I'm going to be showing you in these tutorials. As you make changes, you need to make sure that you hit the apply button. So if I wanted to group 25 and 26 and make those stereo instead of mono, I would have to do that and hit apply. You might hear some computer bits in the background doing their thing. And now 25 and 26 are a stereo pair of channels. That's important to do before you start naming. Now that we've got our stereo inputs selected, we can go through and start naming everything. And if you get lost and you're not sure which channel you're on, up in the top left of where the name is, it will say which input it is. Now we have not patched anything as of yet. We're just trying to get our channels laid out in an order that makes sense. And then we're going to go back and do our patching to make what comes into our stage box and the back of our board line up with these inputs. If you do it this way, things stay better organized. And that's really helpful for when you go to build your layers, but also when you just go to the iPad, your inputs layer or your inputs tab over here, you can see we've got inputs, mix, effects, soft keys, and our custom layers. If our inputs are in the right order, it's going to make it a lot easier for everybody that walks up to the board to understand. So that's going to be super helpful. I recommend setting up your inputs this way. Now that we've set up our inputs and we've named all of them, you can see I've got all of them named and colored. All right, so we'll change this maybe I'll make my acoustic guitar yellow because it's the color of wood. And then both my electric guitars, maybe I'll make gray or something. Right, so I've changed that a little bit. And we can see it along here. I've got all my vocals in red, my crowd mics there. And look, input 25 and 26 that we made into stereo, those say that they're a stereo channel now as well. One other thing as we're getting set up is we need to patch things and put them in the right place. So to do patching, we're gonna have to go to our I/O page. And you can see along the left here, we've got our inputs, outputs, and tie lines. But we're gonna focus on the inputs right now because we're trying to take our signal flow all the way through in a systematic way. We've got local inputs. Those are the XLR connections in the back of the board. And we've got our S-Link inputs. These are the inputs that are coming from the stage box right beside me. So for my inputs, let's imagine that this is on stage and I've got my drums and most of my instruments coming from there. And then the rest of them are maybe wireless inputs or other things that are showing up back in the sound booth. So they're going to be coming from our local inputs. You can see here that they're patched already. And to make any changes, we have to enable the patch button. If I try to, without doing that, it's going to have this pop up and say, hey, are you sure you really want to do this, right? Patching is like Minesweeper, right? You don't want to get blown up and lose a leg, right? So apologize if that was insensitive to anybody that's actually been hurt by a mine. I'm just talking about the video game, okay? So no, I don't actually want to do that. I don't want to make that change. But if I did want to make changes without that pop-up coming, I could hit the patch button ahead of time, and now I can make my patch changes. Let's imagine that none of these are patched, or they're all patched in the wrong place, right? We can see the stereo ones pop up on their own, that's handy. But imagine none of this is done. You wanna know a cool trick? And why we set it up this way so that it matches our input list? If you touch and hold one of these, you can see this yellow light lit up on this knob. We start twisting this knob and it's gonna start patching one-to-one as we go down. And now we've gotten to channel 16, we can let go there and it's made all those patches. We didn't have to hunt and peck all the way down the screen. That saved us some time. We've gotten 1 through 16 on our S-Link because that's all we have on this stage box. The rest of our inputs have to come from the local inputs. I've got them plugged into 9 through 16 because I didn't want to unplug some wireless stuff that was already set up here. So if I go to our I/O page and then go to local, I can scroll down and you can see that the ones that are on top that are dark gray, that means that they've been used already. The ones that are light gray say that they're available. So I'm going to unpatch these so that I can show you how to do that. I started on channel 9 for my last 8 channels from my band in a box, and that's going to be on the keys channel. So if I touch and hold on keys where channel 9 is, right, we've got that. If I touch it and then hold it again, it'll go away. But if I touch and hold and then start spinning the knob, we can get down to 16. Let go, and voila, we've got all of our inputs patched. Now that we have all of our inputs patched, we could go on to making our layers, but there's one more thing that I want to show you that you should reference your input list on to be able to set this up properly, and that's presetting our phantom power. So if we go to any of our channels, right, one of these channels I've set up a mic that's not already a recorded input, and that's coming into my vocal 3 channel, right? I can't see it on the board yet because I haven't set up all of these. I haven't assigned an input channel to a specific spot on the console and these layers yet. Over here on the iPad, if I select vocal 3, you can see that I've got the gain turned up on this microphone already, right? So I can swipe around here to turn up the gain. And let's say that I'm trying to get some gain out of this and I say, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. That's 35 dB of gain. That's a whole lot. 43, check 1, 2. Hey, 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 check 1, 2. And I've still got nothing. right? Maybe I have to undo the patch button to make it work. So safety first, of course. Hey, I've got nothing here. What's going on here? Well, there's a problem in that I haven't turned on phantom power. This is a condenser microphone, and so it requires 48 volts of DC going back down the mic cable to power a little preamp that's inside of here to make the mic work. Otherwise, it's noisy and a very low signal. So I'm gonna gain this back down, and we're gonna come to like below 20. And I'm gonna make sure that it's muted, and I'm gonna press and hold the 48V button. That's gonna let me turn on phantom power. And now we saw a little bit of a bump in the audio levels there. If I unmute this and check 1, 2, hey, now this microphone is working. We can see that we're getting good level, even with moderate gain, not a whole lot of gain, and it's getting good level. And I can turn that up and make that work up until it's hitting 0. So right from where the green turns into yellow, that's a great spot for that. We'll talk more about gain structure and how this board meters all of that in another episode. But for right now, we've turned on phantom power, and you want to go ahead and preset that for all the different inputs that you have that are going to need phantom power. These are condenser mics, and these are active DIs. So you're going to want to go through your input list and verify you've got phantom power on all the channels that need that, and the iPad is the best way to do it before we get started and start putting stuff on faders. So now that we've got our phantom power preset, we've got some stuff going, we can tell that something is working on the board. We're gonna start arranging our inputs onto our layers. We've got layers A through F, so we've got a lot of flexibility with where we can put things. And the way that I like to set up my inputs when I have a limited number of channel faders is I usually like to set them up either in banks of 12, where I will keep banks of 12, say I do 1 through 12 and then 13 through 24 on these 2 banks as far as my input channels. And then you can keep special channels on multiple layers right here so that they don't leave or move. That can be really helpful if you've got a DCA for something, or if you've got a speaking mic that might come up all of a sudden. You want to have that on every layer that you have so that you can get to it quickly. Think of it as the money layer, or the, oh shoot, I've got to turn this up right away. I can reach for it and grab it. So you can see that I've already got some of the drum channels up here. I made them all yellow and kept them the same color. That helps my brain. You can do it whatever you want. If you want each one a different color and that helps you identify it, go for it. It's not going to make me mad. So we've got our drums up to the overheads here. If we want to put more channels on these layers, we're going to go to Setup and then Surface. From Surface, we can select our input channels. And again, this is why I like to keep these in order, is we've got our input channels up here, and we've got our different layers, A, B, C, D, E, and F, over here on the bottom. If I took the overhead channel and I wanted it to disappear, I could swipe it up, and now it's no longer on the layer here, or no longer assigned there. If I slide it back down and put it in that spot and drop it, it's there again. I've got my drum pad channel, SPDs, so I can put those there as well, and I can just keep on moving down the line. I like to scroll down till they're nice and lined up, because I'm not OCD, it's just kind of OCA or something. I don't know. I mean, it helps things stay more organized. I'm just like my precision to another significant digit. I don't really have a problem, I promise. We're gonna just slide things down here, bass down, acoustic, our electric guitar channels, our keys, our vocals. We've started to run out of room. We want to preserve these last 4 to be something that we need, either our playback devices, our pastor's mic, whatever we're going to do. So I'm going to take this off of 13, and I'm going to take that off of there. We're going to preserve these for later, and now I'm going to go down to layer B. I always want to be able to see what I'm doing. So now it automatically changed on the screen as well. If I hit this button, it's going to change it. And now I'm going to come back here, and we're going to start clearing these out because I don't want my drums on there. I could if I did, but I don't. Now that this layer is clear, let's see, the last one I did was keys. Now I'm going to start with my vocals, and I can't get them lined up perfectly anymore. Well, maybe I can. So now I'm going to have my guitar vocal, my other vocals, there's the mic that I have, yay, and my crowd mics. Because I've got the space, and I'm not pressed for real estate, I might put a little space in between, say, vocal mics and crowd mics. My crowd mics for a front of house mix, I don't even have to have on my top control layers. Those might just need to be going to in-ear monitors or to the broadcast. So I can even just leave those off, but I need to put them somewhere so that they can be adjusted, right? Until they're on a control layer, right, on the surface, it's going to be harder to select it and find it to turn it off. This is one problem you can run into, especially if you don't have the iPad setup is sometimes you could have a channel on. You can see I've got signal going to that channel, but then unassign it from any layer and it would still be getting to the master bus. So that could be a problem and get you tripped up. Again, that's why I really like having the iPad and having everything in order so that I can see all of my inputs. And don't drop the mic like I just did. So we're gonna put vocal 3 back. Our crowd mics, maybe we're gonna save for layer C. And we're gonna take this stuff off and our crowd mics are gonna come down here. So I can get to them if I need them, but I don't necessarily need them when I'm mixing vocals for front of house. Now, another thing that we could do, we're gonna put our parked layer here. So let's say we find our computer inputs. We scroll down here, okay, computer and iPhone. We found them, and we're gonna come all the way down here to the last 2 so that those stay consistent, right? If they don't move, they're gonna be good. Maybe I should label an input for a pastor's mic. I'll go ahead and do that on the iPad. Click up here on input 27. We call it pastor. We turn it red because we wanna be able to find it quickly. Now on the pastor's input, you can scroll over here and maybe he goes on layer A and we put it on layer B. And layer C has our effects returns and stuff. We can do that too. So back to layer B, right? We've got our pastor's mic, our comp, our computer playback, and our iPhone input here. We've got our vocals here. We've got some extra real estate. We can think about the way that we want to use that. For now, we're gonna move on to some other things that you might wanna put on your layers. One of them is a DCA channel. So a DCA is a way to remote control different faders that are assigned to it. And they can be super helpful, especially if we wanna mix a big group of faders and turn them up and down all at once. You can see here that we've got MIDI channels and we've got DCA channels. Let's make up some DCA channels for some of the things that are on layer A, but we just want to control the groups of them. So we could have drums, bass, guitars, and keys, or even drums, bass, acoustic, electric, and keys. That's 5 DCAs that we can put over here so that we can remote control all of those, still have balance and control of what we want, but not have to use up all of our channels. So let's try it. So DCAs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we're going to put here. And if you can't tell, some of this I'm making up as I go along. So welcome to the ride. We're going to label our DCAs according to the color of the other channels. So if I go down here on the iPad and I select this DCA, I'm going to make it blue for drums. I think I did light blue for the bass, if I remember right. My third one is going to be acoustic guitar, or we'll just do all guitars, and we'll do that yellow. And our next one is going to be keys, and we'll do that green. Is that how I got keys? Nope, keys were pink. So we're going to do keys as pink to keep things consistent. All right, so now we haven't actually made those do anything. We just labeled them and colored them and put them in a place. And then, oh, we've got another DCA. Oh, let's just simplify that. Again, I'm doing a little bit of making this up as I go along. So now we can assign these to our DCAs. It's really easy to do on the iPad. If you wanted to do it here on the console, you'd go to the routing page, and on a selected channel, you can go to DCA assign. So if we go to A, we can select that and hit DCA assign there, assign this to the drums, and go through all of these and assign them to the drums. We can assign the bass to the bass, or we can go to the DCA itself, and for guitars, and we hit DCA assign. Now we can select all the channels that we want to be assigned to that DCA. So for guitars, I'm going to select electric and acoustic. And for keys, I'm going to select keys. So there's 2 ways to go about that to get your DCAs assigned. Now this is a pretty handy way to do it because I can go here to make my adjustments of how much of this guitar I want versus this guitar, how much keys I want in general, but then I've got control over all of my vocals and then find like an overall control of everything else that I need and not a lot of real estate. Super helpful to use DCAs. Now remember, DCAs are remote controls. There's no audio processing here. So if I select my DCA and go to processing, you can see the only thing on those pages right here, it's showing just that there are drums assigned to it. You can't use EQ or compression or anything on these DCAs. The other thing that I'm going to do on this layer, and this would be my primary mix layer of where I'm kind of hanging out the most, is assign my effects returns on this layer as well. So effects returns where your reverb and delay, things like that come back, and the effects sends our setup right here. We'll set that up in just a little bit, but we're going to go to our setup, and then on our page B or layer B, we're going to go to effects. So effects return, line this up so we can slide it on down. Effects 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we have our effects returns. So if we want to ride up our reverb and delay, we can do that here. If you want to rename your effects returns, let's see how we do that. We're going to go to effects, effects 1 return, and we can rename it. So we could say drum verb, and you only get 6 characters, so you got to be creative in how you drop those vowels, like texting in 2005, right? So we can have drum verb. We can label all the rest of those there as well, so we know what we're doing. With this setup, I mean, we've only got 16 faders. We can pack a lot in here with our remote control options, with our effects returns, and having these parked here. You could run your entire service not having to change layers, which that's kind of the goal. We want to keep things as simple as possible, especially for those transition moments, right? So the band is going down, you can pull all their DCAs down, you can mute the vocals. Well, you should pull them down and then mute them. That's the professional way to do it. And then you can push up your pastor mic, or we could put the handheld mic here if there's somebody coming up to do announcements. These are the kinds of things that you have to think about when you're setting up your board. Not just how to do it, but how to do it in a way that's going to serve you well. After things get set up, you want to be able to have a successful sound check. So for you, I made a free guide called the Sound Check Checklist. You can download it, customize it, print it out, and have it at your sound booth so that you don't miss any steps when you're running sound. You can find a link to that down in the description below. Hey, hopefully this has helped you get set up with your inputs on the Allen & Heath SQ series. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit subscribe, and I'll put all the rest of the videos in this series in a playlist linked down in the description below. We'll do some more mixing and setup videos soon, so check back to see those. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.